we're asking grandparents in particular to get on, and, you know, aunts and uncles to get on board, because if my granny's always going to ask to pick me up or to kiss me, then hopefully we need to teach body autonomy from a very early age. And, you know, I've seen some other comments saying it's bloody ridiculous talking to kids about consent, because they link consent with sexuality, you know, being sexual. And it's not about that necessarily. It's about body autonomy and people knowing that they have the right to say what happens to them.
Yeah, and I just actually, something's just popcorned into my brain as we're talking, and I'm just seeing, like, so what happens, and it's part of the grooming process too, is when kids, like, let's just say you've got someone in your family who's just a little bit off-putting or a little bit strange, or you just get this feeling about them, and you're going to get that, and sometimes it's a good feeling. You should really trust your intuition all the time, but sometimes, you know, your feelings can be a little bit off, but your kids feel that too. And we forget that they have those same feelings as us. And so when they're going to somebody and they don't want to sit on their lap and we're making them, we're actually desensitizing them to those emotions. And they actually lose the ability to then know what is a safe and unsafe space, because their brain is then teaching them and wiring to that situation. And so in many ways, that's how grooming actually starts as well. So when we're forcing kids to sit on, you know, someone's lap that they don't want to be comfortable, or kiss somebody on the lips that you're like, oh, you need to kiss grandpa on the lips, and your kid's saying, no, I don't want to. There's sometimes a reason for that. And when we're telling them that that's, you know, not okay or whatever, or we're going against what the kid is feeling, we're actually sometimes desensitizing them around that. And that's just popping up in my head at the moment, because it is sometimes, can be linked with the grooming part of things as well. So.
And also, Kelly, I'm sure you've been at a party or at a function and somebody has made their child kiss everybody goodbye in the room.
Yeah.
Now, you may know everybody in the room, but you don't know if there's a perpetrator amongst them. And by having made the child kiss that person, should something sexual happen later on, the kid's going to go, well, I didn't want to kiss them and they made me. I have to. So we're giving kids mixed messages. It's
just a message. Yeah, I was going to say, it's mixed messages. So totally 100% agree with you. And, you know, it might be family tradition and it might be a lot of things, but we don't know. Pedophiles are very good at being who we don't think they are. You know, it looks like the lawyer down the street, and it looks like a lot of different people. And it's not what we perceive a pedophile to be. Like, we get this stereotype image of who we think they are, but you have to remember that pedophiles are everywhere and they're everyone. They don't have like a set uniform that they wear or anything. And I know that sounds really cliche, and you might think, gosh, well, we already know that. That's something silly. But sometimes it doesn't register with us that the people closest to us, who are the well-dressed, caring, most wonderful people, could possibly do something like that to your child. And, you know, we forget that. And I'm not trying to make you so scared of the people in your life that you don't let your kids visit, but it's just to really open up your eyes of understanding, to realize that not everybody is a safe person, because we do take it for granted. You know, I live in a really small town. I think everybody's safe, you know, but it's not the case. It's really not the case. And we really need to teach and let our kids be the owners of their own body. If they're not comfortable, they're not comfortable, and there's a reason for it. And that's where you have an opportunity to speak into that and say, hey, why did you feel so uncomfortable about that? It's okay if you do, but I'd love to hear more about that. Please tell me what you're thinking or what you're feeling, you know, and just be really kind, because your kid can easily feel a lot of shame around that, and we don't want them to do that. So, you know, that it does come back into the heart of consent, and just letting your kids feel safe enough to say, no, I don't want that. And that's okay.
And Kelly, once, you know, if they, you know, grandma might be like me and it's got that one whisker on her chin that freaks them out.
I got a whisker on my chin.
Not in front of grandma, but, you know, as you're leaving, say, oh, you didn't want to kiss grandma goodbye. Was there a reason for that? We need to give children permission to tell us those sorts of things. And that's why, you know, I'm so passionate about teaching protective education, because you know, you mentioned earlier about intuition and body feelings. When we're teaching kids, we call them early warning signs.
Yes, correct. Yeah.
And everybody will have had an experience where they've been standing next to somebody in a crowd and you've gone, ooh, there's something about them that just freaks me out.
Yeah.
We need to trust those body signals, and we need to teach children to feel them, and then to, you know, to trust them too. And if a child says, you know, I've got my early warning signs, then not in front of whoever it was, but say, you know, what was it? Because, you know, grandma might have growled at them 2 weeks ago, or, you know, sometimes old people can smell. There's lots of reasons why kids might not have wanted to kiss that person.
Yeah, yeah.
But we need to empower kids. And we also, I was on a chat with some girls from Canada, and they were sort of, they're working in Indigenous populations in Canada, and they were saying that they're having a real problem. And one of the girls was from Australia, but she's married a Canadian. And she was saying, even with her relatives, she knows protective behaviour. She was trained by me 6 years ago, and so she's taught it with her children. But we also have to advocate for children, and, you know, we need to be the ones that are saying, you know, if Granny or Pop or whoever, if my kids don't want to kiss you, then I'm not going to make them kiss you. We need to have those conversations to say, we're trying to empower. And one of the things I've actually half done is written a little card on behalf of children to say, you know, dear whoever, I'm learning to keep myself safe, and you know, I might give you a high five, or I might blow you a kiss. I can still be respectful, but please don't make me, don't hug me or whatever if I don't feel like it. And you know, it's important.
It's a hard practice to get into, isn't it, though, too, because we're so used to that. And I know I've got up kids before, like, go give them a hug, and it's just like, and you forget yourself because you don't want to be the person to say, well, you know, that's rude or whatever. So I totally echo your sentiments with that. Yeah, definitely.
I mean, I wouldn't, when I'm working with children, and, you know, when COVID's not going, I stand in front of 4,500 kids, and they come up and, you know, help me out and stuff. And I always say, can I give you a high five? I'm always trying to model for everybody. And the kids, oh, why is she asking? You know, just putting your hand up, that's not asking for consent. So, you know, these small little things can, you know, help empower children. And they seem so insignificant, but when I'm working with, you know how I always turn everything back to pornography. When I'm working with 14-year-old young fellas and they tell me they're watching 2 hours a week of pornography, and there is no consent in pornography, and that's where they're getting their education from. This is why I'm so passionate about teaching small children, so that as they grow up, they know that, you know, when you're with your partner, if you don't want to have sex at 4 o'clock in the morning, and somebody, you know, just like in Jessica, in fact, I'll try and link Jessica's, the video I spoke about right at the beginning that triggered me this morning, because, you know, even adults don't sometimes realize, you know, I work in different nationalities, and some people say, but she's my wife, she has to have sex with me. Well, do you know what? No, she doesn't.
It's not an assumed responsibility, my friend. And actually, well, we're just going to throw this in there. Just because you're married to somebody doesn't mean you have to have sex with them. It's not a husband or a wife's right to just take that. And I'll say both, because, you know, the minority of DV victims is the male, but it does happen. So, you know, it's not just an assumption that they can have you whenever they want. They don't own you. So, you know, there's that sort of a thing there. So I'll throw that out there. But I think just getting back to the simple thing is, and we spoke about this, about what is sexual violence. And sexual violence is the term that encompasses, it's just a term organisations use to cover everything. But sexual violence isn't always violent, okay? So when we're talking about it, it's a banner that, you know, includes rape, it includes sexual assault, it includes sexual harassment, it includes filming and all those sorts of things. And so the spectrum is very wide. So sexual violence is pretty much anything where a person hasn't given consent. And that's why we're coming back to that issue, because a child cannot give consent. And as Holly said in our video, it has to be informed consent. And the government or the bodies or the people that work with kids or whoever it is has decided that, you know, there's certain ages where people can make these decisions and be informed. And so it comes back to the fact that a child who's under the age of 12 cannot give consent. And so that's in the state of Queensland. I think, Holly, you said it's 13 in Western Australia?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it is in Northern Territory as well.
Yeah. And so I guess it puts it back onto individuals, wherever you're watching from, to make sure you know what the age of consent is. And I guess under the age of 16, it's not, you know, they say you can't give consent either, but it's a bit of a grayer area. And while I'm not going to give you legislation verbatim from the criminal code or anything like that, it's a grey area where, again, it comes down to the child or the teenage person having and being able to give consent, and where the other person doesn't have that power or authority. And so, again, we're going back to that word consent, and it's and I was thinking last night, I'm going to write a book, Holly, and it's going to be called My 3 a.m. Thoughts, because I just don't sleep. And I was thinking again last night about that whole assumed consent, where a kid, like if they're pressured, or, you know, even a teenager or whatever, feels like they've been pushed into a situation where they feel like they've given consent, but they haven't really. And then there's this overriding feeling of guilt that sits with them, because they feel like they can't report it, that it's not wrong because they let it happen when they didn't really let it happen, that they were just manipulated and twisted and, you know, groomed or whatever it is in that space. And so I was just kind of playing with that at 3 a.m. as you do, because again, it comes down to knowing exactly what consent is.
Well, yeah, and I don't know what age it's desperately needed, but I don't know what age you're talking about. But when I'm working with 14-year-olds, you know, and adults, when I'm working with them in remote communities and stuff, I actually go through, you know, it is a yes. It's, if you don't say anything, then that's not a yes. You know, you cannot consent if you're drunk, if you're stoned, if you're asleep. We need to spell all of this out, because, you know, you can't, you know, you might have consented to one thing. There was, I don't know if it's still happening, but I know for a while there, I forget what it was called, that had a specific name, but women were consenting to have sex and with a condom. And then as the guy's about to perform the act, he whips it off. And she didn't have consent to not have, there's a condom on. Yeah. There's a quirky name for it. But, you know, she consented to one thing, but she didn't consent to sex without a condom, because, you know, there are so many ramifications for that. And they've actually tried to bring in a law around it, because it was happening so frequently. So, you know, it should be really clear, but it seems that, you know, people aren't really clear on it.
Yeah. And I think one thing people think too is, like, give consent in the beginning. It's like you're saying with the whole condom element that you were talking about there. It's like, you know, you might start, and look, I talk to teenagers at times about this too. It's like, you know, there might be two people, you know, making out, I guess is the word, you know, getting hot and heavy together. And then they start to, you know, get into the position where they're about to have sex. And then she says no, or no, I don't want to do this. And then he continues and said, well, you said yes before, so why are you changing your mind? So you've already told me yes. And so they continue. Then that's actually rape. So as soon as, you know, you can't, just because the person changes their mind in the middle doesn't mean that you can continue to go forward with the act that you're doing. And a lot of teenagers, young fellas or young women as well, don't kind of get that, you know, just because I said yes, you know, 2 days ago doesn't mean that today it's going to be okay. And, or that they want it every single day. And, you know, there's this whole issue around that. And again, kids cannot give consent. And they're made to feel like by a perpetrator that they have given consent, that you said it was okay. So what's the difference today? And so kids can't make those decisions. They can't, their minds aren't made to effectively be empowered in those decisions and to feel safe to make that decision. That's the other thing.
Yeah.
You know?
So, you know, it has to be freely given, and it can be withdrawn at any time. And we really need to, you know, hone in on everybody about that. It has to be freely given. You cannot be coerced, pressured. I'll dump you if you don't. I've actually created a resource around tricks, lies, bribe, blackmail, threat, guilt, shame, and conning, because all of those, I call them secret enablers, but, you know, they're all used to get anybody to do things. But all of those are not consent.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, Holly, it leads into the domestic violence stuff too. If the kid, if we're, not we, but if it's allowed now, and the behaviour continues early on where they're coercing or threatening, say, I'm going to kill myself because you don't want to be with me, because you don't want to sleep with me, because you don't want to have sex with me. And that is narcissistic abuse starting early. You know, if teenagers are doing that, you know, it's actually embedding those patterns of behaviours which come out later in our DV situations. And, you know, that is why we do this. That is why Holly and I are doing this, because early intervention must happen to stop these patterns of behaviour. It's how we stop abuse. It's how we come together and we say, do you know what, this is my body and this is what I need. This is what I'm okay with. And when we have learned and we've been manipulated and tricked, we fall into these patterns of behaviour where we are people pleasing. We're not willing to say yes or no because we're not really sure, because we haven't got those skills and we haven't had that early intervention. And I'm talking as an adult survivor myself, who's fallen prey to somebody who's been groomed. My family's been groomed. We've been tricked, betrayed, and then as an adult have struggled to understand that consent, to say that, okay, yes, I can actually say no. I can say that this is my body. I can say, you know, what goes and what doesn't go. And if we haven't got those tools and if we don't teach them to our kids, they are going to struggle with the same decisions. And that's what Holly and I are trying to do here, is to go, okay, how can we empower our families and our kids to say no, to say this is my body, to give consent, because we're not saying don't have sex, gosh. We are saying, you know, do it lawfully, do it powerfully, be empowered in making those decisions, do it safely. And so basically we want to make good adults, you know, adults that aren't going to struggle like I have struggled to get to where I'm at. You know, and that's what it comes down to. So it's empowering families, protecting kids, and, you know, coming into this space where we feel safe to have conversations. So if something does happen, we can talk about it. We can talk about it and feel okay to do that. So,
Cal, I don't know if you've seen, it's been all over social media, so you must be living in a bubble if you haven't, that fantastic that fantastic video that's come out of New Zealand where there's a naked couple knocking on the front door, and it's to tell the mum that their son's been looking at porn. But in the video, it's so well done, and they actually say they're obviously a couple, but they're making porn, and they actually talk about consent in that. And, you know, we would never. So if adults, you know, have teenagers, I really would encourage them to sit down and watch that video. And again, I'll put it in the thing at the bottom, because it is so powerful. You can talk about pornography, but you can really hone in and say, you know, in porn, there is no consent. And it is, have you seen it? It's so clever.
I think I have, but I might have to, is there a link to it? Can we find it?
So it's on YouTube.
Well, add it to the link. Add it to the list.
I've got a list. I'll put all these things in. But honestly, it is so clever because, you know, we need to equip people, because, you know, some people might not know how to have the conversation, and that's why videos are really good. There are also some fantastic books that around consent too, if adults and parents and teachers don't know how to bring up those subjects.
Yeah,
but,
definitely.
You know, it is the foundation of everything, I think. You know, you talked about the grooming and things like that, and, you know, how people that groom children can make the children believe that they did consent. You know, I was in a parent group the other day, and they were talking about a family member, a cousin had abused their child, but the child was 4, and the teenager got them to do something, but they said, but mummy, he asked me, and I said, yes, it was okay. We need to teach little kids that, you know, you can't consent to private things like that. You know, your private parts are your special parts. And so, these sorts of things are happening, and the fact that we have to talk about them, and are going to talk about them for quite a while, I just hope people find real value in what we're trying to do. And I also want to put out a disclaimer that, it's not only men. We're not men haters. I've got a lovely husband, and we negotiate. Still have to, at our age, still have to negotiate, because sometimes he'll tap me on the shoulder and I say, "Oh, not tonight." And so, but it's so important that people understand that, it's not only men that abuse children. We're not here to, pick on one or the other, but we're just trying to do the best job we know how to bring this, because, I study this all the time, and I don't know anybody that's having conversations like we're trying to have to empower people.
Yeah. And it's tough too. And Holly and I, we kind of don't know everything, but we're just trying to start a conversation so that, you can have these conversations with your families and stuff. So, we're just starting the ball rolling and opening up a door. And, hopefully you're going to walk through it with us and continue the journey. So, I think what we might do, Holly, we need to recap anything from our last video. And then we'll just get, if anyone wants to, I've got questions, to pop them in the feed, and we'll get on to answering some of those for you very shortly. But I just did want to cover really quickly, while you're thinking about your questions, there's a couple of people watching on Facebook. I'd love to hear what you think, or what questions you may have, or if you're getting any inboxes there, Holly.
I've checked. I'm just checking on your page.
Yep. So I'll read this actual definition, and I've got this from the Dictionary of Medicine. So I actually want to just define sexual violence, and it just is that sexual abuse is any act of a sexual nature performed in a criminal manner, as with a child or a non-consenting adult. It includes rape, incest, oral copulation, and penetration of genital or anal opening with a foreign object. The term also includes lewd, or I can't even say this word, lascivious acts with a child, any sexual act that could be expected to trouble or offend another person when done by someone motivated by sexual interests. Acts related to sexual exploitation, such as those related to pornography, prostitution involving minors, or coercion of minors to perform obscene acts, and that includes over the internet. And so basically, it again comes down to somebody who's got, so a criminal manner is an intent to actually do something against another person that is non-consensual. So that is the intent, and it always has to have an intent. And it also is, and it doesn't have to be, when I say sexual violence is a term, it's a banner, it doesn't have to be violent. It can actually just be, let's just say a perpetrator's got a picture of a child who's naked on their phone. If they show that picture to another person, it's actually called showing pornography, but there's another word for it, distributing child pornography. So, oh my gosh, I had a brain fart. And so that again is another, and it is just the act of showing somebody, and that's not violent, but I mean, that child has had to go through that experience of whatever's happened to them to have that photo taken. And so that itself, there's multiple offenses in one act. And so it really just depends what it is, but it's kind of a misleading term when we say violent, because again, we're talking about the 90% of sexual offenses that happen behind closed doors. So the Royal Commission addressed institutional child sexual abuse, which is about 9%. 1% is what happens in a park that is violent, that is what you hear about, that is a rape or and the media will hone in on it. But this is the 90%. And yes, it can be violent for some, but it's not violent for everybody. And when I say that it's a violation of the body, it is personally violent, but it is not, it doesn't show on the outside. So we're going to record our next video after this on the signs of abuse. And there's not always signs, and it's not always violent. So you're not always going to see it, because, it's not like every pedophile is, cutting or ripping skin or, making somebody bleed. It's not obvious. And so that's why it is so important to understand what it is, where it starts, and that is, again, consent. It is about empowering our kids and families to be able to teach our kids what that means, And then for those children to feel safe, and again, keyword safe, to be able to have those conversations with adults. And so that is again our purpose. We talked quite at length in our video, and I will drop the link, as I said, into this live comments and feed if you're interested in watching and you haven't seen it, or if you go to my page or Holly's, you'll be able to watch it. But yeah, we do make them about between 40 minutes and an hour long. I'm going to try and keep them a little bit shorter because it takes me forever to upload them. But it is so important, guys, and I'm so happy that you are here, that you're with us, that you're invested in this. But did you want to add anything, Holly? Because I'll just open it up if they got questions, if anyone's got questions or thoughts.
There's none in the chat, and there's not really any in your feed on your Facebook page either yet. So
okay, I'll just have a quick look in my messages. Okay, let's have a little look here.
So while you're looking, I'll just recap over the videos that I will put in the link.
Yes.
So I'll put consent and a cup of tea, consent and a bike ride, consent for kids, the song that I made with some kids in a remote community, and try and link to Jessica's video about adults that didn't consent to having sex when they were asleep. Is there anything in there?
Well, I was just going to say, I've just got one comment there that someone has shared that bullying was a relief at school from what was happening at home. And, you know, that comes back, I think, to the violence. And again, it's very different for every child. And, you know, sometimes it is horrific. And there are kids and even adults that are living in these horrific situations where they're being repeatedly abused over and over again. And you know, it is what, if I could do anything, if I could just stop it, I would. And I know many of us, you know, would hope that we could just stop child abuse, but it's not realistic to think that way. And I think, you know, if we can just change one life at a time, impact one family, empower one family, whatever this might be, whatever this achieves, I just hope that we can just reduce the numbers, because 1 in 5 girls, and, you know, whether it's 1 in 6 or 1 in 10 men before the age of 18 have had a sexual experience they didn't consent to. It's too many. It's too many. And if we can just reduce it, then, you know, we're doing the right thing as best as we can. And I just know that you can overcome, like, as an adult. I mean, I'm a prime example of it. I struggle, but you know what? I've got a pretty bloody good life. And I've had to work to get where I'm at. And, you know, I'm a testimony to continuing through adversity and being able to grow. Like, you can get there. It takes work, and you have to be willing to do the work. But, you know, we just got to one life at a time. That's all I can say, you know.
And for me, Kel, it's about education.
Yeah.
You know, I'm going to challenge everybody that listens to this to please go to your child's school and find out if they are learning protective education. Because like you said, we can't stop it, but we can give people the tools to be able to tell us sooner. I know you talk about, you know, you made your first disclosure to a coach. But, you know, in protective education, we teach about, and we'll cover this in other episodes, but in more detail, but we teach them to have a safety team of people they can go to. We talk to them about, you know, if you can't talk to somebody face to face, ring the kids helpline. Talking about early warning signs, talking about public and private, teaching about pornography. You know, schools in every state, it's supposed to be some form of protective behaviours or protective education is being taught, but make sure that it's being done really well and not just glossed over. So I'm going to challenge everybody to, you know, please advocate for your children and you know, stand up at a P&C meeting or see your child's teacher and say, is this being taught? Because, you know, that's why I reached out to you in the first place, was because I create resources to help adults teach it more easily. And, you know, if we can just create something else that would help just that one other kid tell us sooner, so that we can get them the support that they need a lot quicker.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, so it's what year level should we teach protective ed? So yeah, the question is what year level should we teach protective education? I think as soon as they can speak.
Yeah.
It's got to be the naming of the
Three at the latest.
parts. Yeah, yeah. And I think it's just so that they can like if something happens, like as a 3-year-old, 4-year-old, it's pretty hard for them to sort of fight off some big person. But they can put words to what's happened to them. And if they can't put words to them, it actually will get dismissed by law enforcement agencies because they can't disclose effectively. So we must teach from the earliest age what their body parts are: penis, vagina, breasts. Like they have to know those words. And as uncomfortable as that conversation may be, teach them from the very first moment that they can be doing that. So at home, in schools, you know, that education, and in schools probably from prep, as soon as they start, you know, these protective behaviours should be taught. But Holly, what year levels do you speak to about this mostly?
So Kelly, I've written a curriculum to start at childcare from 3. Yep. So, you know, a 3-year-old, like you said, can say penis and vagina and vulva. So I believe that we need to start at 3 at the latest. And this might freak some people out, but I believe that we need to start talking about pornography from 6 at the latest.
Yeah, well, there's isn't there the stats around that 6-year-olds, I think, what is it, 1 in 6 or 1 in 10 6-year-olds have seen some sort of pornography? Is that right?
Yeah, there's just so much of it on YouTube. It's not funny. And, you know, over the last couple of days, I've been having parents contacting me because I've been speaking about it on my page and saying, you know, how, oh no, my child wouldn't, you know, look at it and things like that. It finds them, or the kid next door will show them. So
that's right. It's happening.
You know, we're not talking about, it's just as part of the public and private lesson. And we just say, if you see naked pictures, go and show the adult what you've seen. And and again, we'll cover off on this in great detail a bit later on in another video or podcast or whatever. But, you know, we can start, and there's lots of, you know, good resources out there to help if people don't know how to have those conversations.
And the actual importance of having them, because I could start a whole other conversation. Oh, and I won't, but it's about, it leads into desensitizing kids. So then actually that forms part of the grooming process as well. So we won't go there because I'll open up a can of worms, and I'll probably just give it a couple more minutes. If anyone's got any questions that they want to pop in the feed now so we can answer it. And then we're going to head off, and we'll be back again next week at a time to be advised at a later date. But yeah, thank you guys so much for continuing to be part of this. As I said, Holly and I are going to continue to bring this to you each week. We are going into the signs of abuse. And when I say signs, we're talking about physical, emotional, psychological signs. And look, we're not going to go through every single thing. We're just going to have a conversation around some of the things that might be significant to look for, because again, sometimes there's no signs. And we might just say something that it might not even be your child, but it might be somebody else's, or happening at the school, or you might pick up on something, and then, you know, you can report it or whatever it is, or you can have a conversation with that child and be like, tell me about why you do this, and, or, you know, whatever it might be. But, you know, you might pick up from what we say something that you didn't know before. So it is going to be a very powerful conversation, and we will go live on that the week after. So that's what we're up to. So if there's no further questions, we will finish up. Have you want to add anything, Holly?
No, I just promise that I'll share all those links shortly.
Beautiful.
And thank you everybody for watching.
No worries. And guys, so you can reach Holly at Safe for Kids. That's safe with a number 4. Safe for Kids Australia on Facebook. And obviously, if you're watching this, you already got my details, but I'd love you to share this video to get it out there. If you can get people to like our pages, so that we can actually continue to share this message, and more people that, and again, it's not about getting likes, it's actually about sharing this message, because we're doing this for free. There's no programs attached to this, although Holly does have programs available. We're not advocating that outright. This is actually about education, prevention, and empowering families. So my website, kellyhumphreys.com, there's actually a lot of blogs that I have written about these topics, which you can read. Again, that's free. just to read. The information is there. But we are here for you guys. If you've got questions, you've got thoughts, or you want us to address something and you don't want to put it in a public feed, please send myself or Holly a message and we will address it in one of our sessions. Okay? But thanks again for coming on board and being with us. I'm going to stop the live stream. Cheers, guys. Appreciate it. And out. Goodness me. How you going, Ange? You still here?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Thanks for coming again and being part of it.
That's okay.
Hopefully I'm not still live streaming and talking to myself.
No.
Okay, good. How's your day going? All right?
Yeah, it's good.
Awesome.
I feel bad because I never know what questions to ask.
Yeah, that's okay. You'll get better at it. And like, if it pops in your head and you think, gosh, probably shouldn't ask it, just ask anyway.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it, because I bet you're not the only one. And at the end of the day, I don't know how many people have seen this event and they still haven't come on board. So like, that's power to you, that you're actually here, that you're part of it, that you're even listening.
Yeah.
And something might come up, later in the week. So, it usually comes to me either just as I'm waking up in the morning or in the shower. That's what I get. Oh, I should have asked that. Damn.
Yeah. And
I
Debbie,
always go to ask and then it's like on to the next subject, so I just don't know.
yeah, no, that's right. And it actually really helps us, because sometimes we get stuck too. So I just talk. I'm like, but so it just, and it helps other people start to engage as well. Because like, oh, well, people are asking questions, so don't be afraid to ask. It doesn't matter if it sounds silly or you're not sure. So all good.
You're doing well anyway. And
thank you. It means a lot. I struggled after our first one. I had a lot come up for me, and I was like, oh God, can I do this? But no. So I appreciate that.
You speak really well. I've told you this already, but yeah, you do. Yeah, you just speak really well.
Thanks, Ange.
It's all good.
All right, you take care of yourself, hey?
I don't know how to leave it.
That's all right. Holly, I'll start another video shortly and we can get on to our next one. We just won't record until we're ready.
Okay.
See you in a bit.
Yep.
Okay, bye. See you, Ange.